Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel Bot Bros. My name is Akash. So in this video we are going to understand what MCP is and how it works. So MCP is one of the most important concept when it comes to AI agents and modern automation. So I'll explain everything in a simple manner. So by the end of this video you will understand what MCP is and how this MCP works. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So MCP, what is MCP? So MCP is nothing but a model context protocol. Like it is a open source standard protocol for connecting our AI agents to external system. For example, web APIs, database, then local file system. So this MCP is specifically designed for AI models or the AI agents to dynamically interact with the external tools, and it provides a standard way for discovering tools and use this external system. So let's understand this MCP using very simple example. Imagine you only speak English language, but you want to communicate with the people who speak German, Chinese, French, or any other language, right? But for that you need to learn these languages. So instead of like learning every language yourselves, you can just talk to the translator, and this translator handles everything like understanding, converting, and delivering the message. So this translator is nothing but we can say the MCP. And in the same way, our AI agent don't talk directly to the different APIs systems or the database. So they use something called the MCP, that is nothing but model context protocol, as a translator. So why this MCP is so important? So if you take an example, if you have three different AI agent and three different external tools, right? You need to write a different integration models for each agent, because there was no common standard. So this MCP is needed because our AI agent need to interact with the multiple systems like the API, database, and the workflows. So without MCP, every integration we have to build separately, which make things complex and time consuming. So this MCP solves by providing the standard way of communication, and your agent simply can connect through the MCP to the external system. So it allows the multiple AI agent to reuse the same tool as well. So now let's understand how this MCP works. So how this MCP architecture is working. So this MCP follows a client server architecture. So there are three terms like the MCP host, MCP client, and MCP server. So what is MCP host? So MCP host is nothing but your agent, or we can say the where your agent sits on that environment. So the MCP host, we can say the host which we can say the AI agent, where it decides when to use the MCP. For example, if you take an example like the cloud desktop, or we can say the VS Code, UiPath agent builder. So what is this MCP client? So this MCP client maintains the connection between your MCP server, and it will obtain the context from the MCP server for the MCP host to use. So it can discover the tools from the MCP server. It will send a request to the MCP server, and it will receive the response from the MCP server. And the MCP server, it will expose the tools and the resources that your MCP host can use. So it execute the tools whenever it receives the request, and it will return the structured output. So overall, how this actually working is like your MCP host runs, and it will receive the input from the user. Then your LLM will decide which tool is needed. Then your MCP client will send a request to the MCP server, and your MCP server execute the tool, and it request flows back to the your MCP host via the MCP client, and the host shows that response to the user. Like for example, if you take like first, MCP client will ask to the MCP server what tools are available. Then MCP server will reply back with like the list of available tools and their capabilities. Now your client knows what tools MCP server has. Then your user query goes to the LLM along with your available tools. Then your LLM decide which tool to use. So based on the your user's query, it will decide which tool needs to use. Then your MCP client call that specific tool which chosen by your LLM, and the MCP server will execute for you, and it will send back to the response, and that response becomes the context which send back to your LLM. So how this this is how like MCP architecture works. So there are types of MCP in UiPath. First one is like UiPath MCP server, which exposes the tools like the RPA workflows, API workflows, agentic process. And the second one is the coded MCP server, where we can host the custom coded MCP server. We can bring our own custom coded MCP server using UiPath Python SDK. We can simply write the code, and we can simply uh, deploy that MCP server into UiPath ecosystem. The third one is the command MCP server. So command MCP server, which can external package feed, and we can just simply use the command using like the npm, like for the node.js, or using like platform supported commands. Then last one is the remote MCP server. So we can connect the remote MCP server outside of the UiPath ecosystem. So remote MCP server functions similarly like how UiPath MCP server work, coded or command MCP server, but it is hosted on the internet rather than your local machine. So they expose the tools, then prompt the resources. So this is about like all about the MCP. So in the next video, I'm going to cover like each type of MCP with the practical demo. So that's the quick about the what is MCP, how MCP works, what is the MCP architecture. So I hope you understand the concept very well, and thanks for watching.